me, so anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Saturday nights on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
Saturday nights on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The coronation is an event that has remained virtually unchanged for 1,000 years.
And we invite you to join us here on GB News for this historic event.
All next week, we'll be talking to you in towns and cities across the country.
Building up to the main event on Saturday.
From pageantry at the palace to unearthing the history of this ancient ritual.
Come celebrate with us.
The coronation of King Charles III, Saturday, May the 6th. Join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Good evening, it's 7 o'clock and I am Laurence Fox. First up, has the cancel culture of the left finally infiltrated the Conservative Party? Andrew Bridgen has been brutally cancelled. Usually it's the Blue Hair Brigade that are terrified of free speech, but have the Conservatives become infected with the woke mind virus as well? Then, stories of the week. Richard Sharp has stepped down from the BBC after yet another report, investigation and cancelling. Prince William is more popular than King Charles amongst the young, and speaking of the young, will they ever be able to buy a house? And finally, and most importantly, I want to hear from you. So send me your views my way at gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet me at Laurence Fox. That's all coming up after headlines with Ray Addison.
Thanks, Laurence. Your headlines this evening. The Deputy Prime Minister says the evacuation of British nationals from Sudan will end on Saturday. Oliver Dowden says the decision was made after a decrease in the number of requests for help. So far, British forces have rescued more than 1,500 people.
What we have seen over the past 24 hours or so is a significant decline in the British nationals coming forward. Now, that's what you'd expect. It's what's happened with other countries. So what we are saying now is that people should expect within the next 24 hours, so by 6 o'clock UK time tomorrow, for us to cease those flights.
Richard Sharp has resigned as chairman of the BBC after a report found that he breached the rules for public appointments. The review says he failed to properly disclose his involvement in facilitating an £800,000 loan guarantee for Boris Johnson. Mr Sharp says the breach was inadvertent, but he's quitting to prioritise the interests of the broadcaster. Following calls from Labour that he should have been sacked, the Prime Minister has said that the right process was followed.
This is about doing things properly and professionally, and when concerns are raised, it's right that there is a proper process, an independent process, that we don't prejudge, we allow it to carry on, establish the facts of what happened, reach a conclusion. That's happened. Richard Sharp has resigned, but it's right that we do these things properly and professionally. I think most people will think that's the right thing to do.
Scotland's police watchdog has launched an investigation into the death of a pregnant teacher. The announcement comes after police found the body of her missing partner at a reservoir near Glasgow. Officers had been looking for 36-year-old David Yates after Morel Sturrock was killed at her home on Tuesday. She was 29 weeks pregnant and her unborn baby did not survive. Mr Yates' death is not being treated as suspicious. Unions representing teachers and head teachers in England say they'll take coordinated strike action in the autumn after accusing the government of wanting education on the cheap. The General Secretaries of 4 unions say they'll now work together in their long-running dispute over pay. It's after they rejected the government's offer of a one-off payment of £1,000 and an average pay rise of 4.5% next year. The National Association of Head Teachers says the decision sends a clear signal to the government that the dispute is not going away. Well, health workers belonging to the GMB union have accepted the government's 5% pay offer. GMB officials say they will now vote to accept the offer at a meeting of the NHS Staff Council next week. Health Secretary Steve Barclay says the deal recognises the outstanding job NHS staff do whilst protecting the government's commitment to halve inflation. And the government says the UK is being vigilant in the North Sea after alleged Russian spy ships were seen operating near offshore energy infrastructure. Earlier this month, a joint investigation by European broadcasters claimed that a Russian citizen was part of an operation to map undersea infrastructure. The report found the ship was sailing around the Baltic and North Seas for a month, passing wind farms off the coast of several Scandinavian countries. We're on TV, online, on DAB+ radio and on TuneIn 2. This is GB News. Back now to Laurence.
We are entering the age of the consensus. As facts are subsumed in feelings and empirical truth becomes inconvenient, irritant to progressive ideology, with nothing rational, reasonable or quantifiable to back up their ever more ludicrous claims, the woke left huddle together and form a mighty consensus. It doesn't matter if their divisive claims are debunked time and time again and that they lose argument after argument. What matters are their feelings and their moral superiority. So what if they are wrong, if they identify as being right? We saw this week when a lady called Marina decided against having a sensible debate with Jacob Rees-Mogg, choosing the drunk girl in a bar who knows her man is on the way out and wants to humiliate him in public one last time approach instead.
We're potentially sitting on trillions of cubic feet of gas underneath us. I'm not. There are very good geological studies showing this.
Do you genuinely believe your lies?
All you say when you disagree is that somebody is lying. But this isn't a proper political argument.
You've been proven
No.
It was fine for Marina to be personal, rude and obnoxious because she identified as being virtuous, righteous and superior. The strange thing was, post the Mogg bashing, the wokists started applauding her for destroying Jacob during that interview. They formed a consensus which identified Marina as the victor in the clash. And this is the problem with the progressive left. They don't play by the rules. They smear, cancel, name-call and cry-bully, all in the knowledge that those on the other side of the argument won't sink to their level. They know that if we did abandon critical thinking and reasoned argument, there will be no reconciliation, just the mutually assured destruction that their anarchic pursuit of chaos so ravenously craves. This tactic is becoming ever more prevalent as the damage done by these hug-punching cry-bullies becomes ever more evident. We used to associate these tactics with the hard left, but now they are now ever more obvious in the Conservative in name-only party. Which brings me on to Andrew Bridgen. I have a great deal of sympathy for the victims of cancellation. Entire lives and livelihoods ripped apart as the baying woke mob gurn in delight, desperate for an apology so they can cheer and gurn all the more as their victim is dragged on to the scaffold. But the brutal bullying of Mr. Bridgen, unprecedented in its cruelty, didn't come from the other side of the House. It came from within his own party. And that should worry anyone with a Conservative leaning.
The disgusting anti-Semitic, anti-vax conspiracy theories that have been promulgated online this morning are not only deeply offensive, but anti-scientific and have no place in this House or in our wider society.
Can I join with my right honourable friend in completely condemning those types of comments that we saw this morning in the strongest possible terms? Obviously, it is utterly unacceptable.
So what was his crime? He quoted a Jewish researcher asserting that vaccine harms were the greatest crime against humanity since the Holocaust. Quoting a Jewish researcher and daring to question the reasoning behind injecting babies with experimental gene therapies with many known side effects, including death. You would have thought he'd be applauded for using his inquiring mind to bring these serious concerns to light, whether you agree with them or not. But no, the heresy was complete, and a Conservative former health secretary played the classic progressive card and went straight for the allegation of racism and anti-Semitism, an absurd and baseless allegation aimed to cause as much reputational damage as possible. as I've said before, is because Conservatives don't play the shutting down a debate by calling everyone a racist card that society remains passingly harmonious. So for them to behave in this way with such rigour should concern us all. Fortunately, progressives, by their nature, always overreach, and such was the case in this situation. The Health Secretary, or former Health Secretary, may have been protected by his parliamentary privilege when making these defamatory slurs in the House, but hubris got the better of him, and the ensuing tweet repeating the allegation does not receive the same protection. Watch this space. Whilst Hancock, like a good little comrade, cheers on the addition of vaccine misinformation and disinformation to the latest censorship bill snaking its way through Parliament and pushes for the UK to hand over sovereign decision-making and future pandemic planning to an Ethiopian communist at the World Health Organization, Andrew Bridgen was trying to save children. And for that, he's been kicked out of the party he has served for so long. A highly regarded and effective MP who has increased his majority at every election and made his constituency one of the most desirable to live in the country, among many other achievements. It is also interesting to note at this point that the regime and its unelected leader did in fact heed Mr. Bridgen's warnings and withdrew the gene therapies from being used on children in the end. A cynic might point out that this stopped the regime from getting rid of a crucial and potentially awkward control group as we begin to pick apart the truth from this delusional mass experimentation on mankind.
Oh no, I'm devastated.
One would hope that this will sit uncomfortably with some Conservatives, those who care about transparency and free speech, Conservatives who don't believe in bullying and cancelling people, Conservatives who believe in free and open debate, Conservatives who are conservative. Time will tell. It is my view that whether you agree with him or not, fearless and critical thinkers, so rare in this consensus parliament of ours, are crucial to the national debate. More so as we begin to wake up, rip off our face muzzles and face the chaos of shutting down society, education and the economy for years to protect us from a bug with a more than 99% survival rate. So, tonight, I'm asking you, are there any true Conservatives left? Email gbviews at gbnews.uk or tweet GBNews or tweet me at Laurence Fox. Right, you won't want to miss Scarlett Maguire, former Labour advisor, and Suzanne Evans, political commentator, to discuss if the Conservative Party are leaving behind their core voters. I will be back in 3.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nana, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Saturday nights on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
Saturday nights on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hola. Now, it's usually the wokey left that cancel, deplatform, sack and silence those who speak up. However, it seems the Conservative Party have started to do just that in the sacking of Mr Andrew Bridgen. I am concerned that the traditional Conservative values of respect and free speech and tolerance are being hijacked by the noisy minority. So, joining me to discuss are the Conservative values traditionally made, the party worth supporting, have fallen under the pressure of governing by consensus? Scarlett Maguire, former Labour advisor, and Suzanne Evans, political commentator. Scarlett, what do you recognise the Conservative Party?
Yes,
for being Conservative?
Well, of course I recognise the Conservative Party for being Conservative because, I mean, Rishi Sunak is a classic Conservative, isn't he? He's somebody who desperately wants a small state. Unfortunately, it's not what the British people want, and they expect him to
Quite a big state, though, isn't it, at the moment?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Is actually what the British people want. What the British people want is somebody who protects them, who brings in, the furlough scheme, who lets them off the gas and electricity. There is no question that the problem with Britain for the last 70 years has been that, on the one hand, they want low taxes, which means a small state, and on the other hand, they want Scandinavian levels of public services, and you can't have both. And we do expect a really good health service, and we do expect a good education service, and we expect to be looked after from the cradle to the grave with a decent pension. And the problem for Rishi Sunak is he is a small state person, but he's having to bow to pragmatism.
So he's, but I mean, is he a Conservative? He may be.
Well, of course Yes, he is a Conservative. I mean, he's a very right-wing Conservative, actually. I mean, he dresses it up in being a nice guy, but he's a Conservative. I mean, there's no question. I mean, people like you who sort of get at...
Hang on a minute. Don't start sentences with people like you. I had this the other day from a doctor.
Right.
He asked me whether I should actually exist. I'm like, well, come on, mate, we're a doctor.
I am not questioning your existence, Mr. Fox. What I'm saying is that it's really interesting that people who attack Rishi Sunak for not being Conservative, if you look at what he says and what he tries to do, I mean, he keeps promising tax cuts, doesn't he? He can't deliver them because you can't deliver tax cuts and decent public services, which is what Liz Truss, obviously. I mean, I don't know whether she was your sort of a Conservative, right?
Well, I quite like the Trussonomics, if I'm honest, and I think she was killed off so that they could have this unelected leader of the Conservative Party who is going to tax the hell out of the British people.
I think we could...
And all the while public services get worse and worse and worse and worse. But look, wait, hold your horses.
We could call you a conspiracist. We could call you a conspiracist.
Now, I've got to bring in Suzanne Evans, please, for the balance of this debate. Suzanne, how are you? What is a Conservative?
I'm very well, thank you.
Are the Conservatives conservative?
What is a Conservative? Well, I think for me, a Conservative is somebody that wants a small state, low taxes, very much a focus on law and order, controlled immigration, somebody that actually lets people have the freedom to be the people they want to be and to live the lives they want to be, somebody who's pro-business. And You know, I used to be a Conservative. I was a Conservative councillor in the London Borough of Merton for a few years. And I said when I left, I didn't leave the Tory party. The Tory party left me, because I think it has very much changed over the years. I mean, you compare Margaret Thatcher with Rishi Sunak, and my goodness, they're like chalk and cheese. It's just so obvious they are poles apart. Now, of course, political parties evolve. They have to change. They have to keep up with changes in society. But I think I'm not alone. Well, I'm definitely not alone in feeling that the Conservative government now is not really Conservative, that you couldn't get a cigarette paper between them and the Labour Party. You know, we've got the highest tax burden in 60 years. Public sector debt is running at 99.6% of GDP. The state is now so big with 5.8 million employees. We've got windfall taxes galore on North Sea oil and gas already, risking investment in those projects. Yesterday, a new levy on gambling revenue was announced. I mean, it's just not the Conservative Party, I think, that most people traditionally recognise.
And what do you make of that? So yeah, you're basically making my point for me. The front bench, it seems to me the front bench of the Conservative Party are no longer Conservative and haven't been for a very long time. What do you think of the cancel culture within the party and the way that they've treated Andrew Bridgen?
Yeah, I think Andrew Bridgen was treated pretty badly. I would disagree that I think the whole of the front bench Conservative isn't Conservative. I think you look at people like Suella Braverman, for instance, who very much are, I think, much more of that traditional Conservative ilk. But Andrew Bridgen, I think Andrew Bridgen raised a very, very serious point. You will recall during the COVID times that the vaccine was pushed very, very hard. Anyone that didn't want to take it, who felt that they didn't need it, or perhaps were concerned about its efficacy or the fact that it hadn't been tested for a long period of time. It might have gone through medical tests, but I remember a doctor telling me it takes 30 years to know a vaccine is absolutely safe. So I think what happened to him was pretty disgraceful. If we have a situation in any political party when somebody that asks legitimate questions is stamped on and shut down, that is not a good look. And it's potentially dangerous.
I mean, I think any politician who doesn't understand that you never, ever compare anything to the Holocaust has...
Can I ask a question? I was thinking about this, sorry, and I don't mean to interrupt you. Who made up the rule that we can't compare anything to the Holocaust?
Well...
It seems like it's the same people that made up the rules that you can't dead-name trans people. It was just like, it's a rule, you're not allowed to do it.
No, Laurence, hold... There is nobody...
Why is there a rule? Why can't you compare to things to the Holocaust?
Because people like Conservatives go completely nuts. I mean, it's the Conservatives who are always accusing people of anti-Semitism, actually. It's not Labour. Conservatives go on. And actually, it's so bad that if you criticise Israel, right, you are then accused of being anti-Semitic. It is bad. But, I mean, the thing is, it's about the politics, isn't it? Andrew Bridgen should have known that comparing something to the Holocaust, when frankly...
Was Andrew Bridgen comparing it, or was he quoting a Jewish researcher?
It doesn't really matter.
So explain to me why it doesn't really matter.
OK, so Rebecca Long-Bailey lost her job as Shadow Secretary of State for Education because she retweeted an article in which Maxine Peake was rude about Israel, right?
I mean, seriously, are you going to go there? You're going to go with Maxine Peake and Rebecca Long-Bailey as examples of people that was pure anti-Semitism. What Andrew Bridgen did was quoted a Jewish researcher. Sorry, Suzanne, tell me, involve yourself.
Yeah. Well, I just feel that that's not what Andrew Bridgen did. He didn't compare it to the Holocaust. He talked about it being one of the biggest scandals since the Holocaust. I mean, sorry, you might talk semantics, but I think that's a very different issue from what has happened and the clear anti-Semitism that we have seen within the Labour Party.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, OK, look, we don't want to ascribe lazy sort of things to people, but what Diane Abbott wrote, what Rebecca Long-Bailey, sorry...
Hold on, let's talk about Diane Abbott.
OK, good, let's do that.
Everybody goes on about anti-Semitism. Actually, she was incredibly rude about travellers, but everybody forgets that she put travellers, Irish and Jews in the same thing because they pass for white, all right? And actually, it was over and over again, and it was Jewish people who had to say the travellers are very upset. I never saw an interview with a traveller because it was done as an anti-Semitic thing, not as actually Diane doing a hierarchy of racism in which black people were only... And I
agree with you. The hierarchy of race... So you would condemn this stupid woke idea of the hierarchy of racism?
There isn't a woke idea of the hierarchy of racism.
Well, it's an intersectional idea. It comes from cultural Marxism. That's what it is.
No, there is not a woke idea of the culture of the
hierarchy of racism. But you can't be racist to white people, for example, would be part of that.
There isn't actually.
Unless they're gypsies.
Well, the question is what is a white person, right? And actually, that's a much more interesting question. So somebody like James Baldwin said, anybody with a drop of black blood is not white, OK? Which means most of us are not white. But actually, white supremacists say exactly the same. If you've got any black blood in you, you're not white. There's a whole problem with racism. I mean, you know, somebody
talking about it all the time for one.
Somebody I know who was a refugee from Turkish Cyprus, so she was Turkish Cypriot. Her parents, when they came over here in the 70s, were absolutely, you know, catcalled and everything like that. I mean, she experienced racism, and yet some people would say, oh, but she's just a Cypriot. I mean, I think it's very difficult. And that's why it's much better to have a conversation than to start doing your big, you know, this is it. But I would also like to say about conservatism is it changes. I mean, when I was young, which was probably long before you, when I was young...
I'm getting on a bit now.
Yeah, you are. When I was young, right, that actually, and Mrs Thatcher, she condemned one-parent families. Homosexuality was pretty bad. She brought in Section 28, right, which certainly, there would never have been gay marriage or anything like that. I mean, now...
Suzanne, wait 1 second. Suzanne? Was
Yes.
Margaret Thatcher wrong to bring in Section 28?
Well, I think she was about trying to not promote homosexuality in schools. She probably went about it the wrong way. But I think, you know, that legislation was of its time. We have moved on since then. I will say, though, I do agree with Scarlett on one thing as a single mother. I frequently felt that the Conservative Party has tended to pick on us and not like us very much. So I would agree with you on that one, Scarlett.
I'm with you, Suzanne.
I remember David Cameron as well. So pretty brutal about single mothers, and I was absolutely livid, having never taken a penny from the state in my life. But there you go. I think though this whole issue of racism, though, I think what's going to happen when you start to break communities down into their lowest common denominator. I remember having a conversation. This will surprise you, but I had a conversation with Yasmin Alibaya Brown a few years ago now. It must be a good 10, 20 years ago, in which she said, when I first came to Britain, we experienced racism. There was a cohesive black community that covered all of the non-white community. Now, she said, it's just been broken down into little segments and we're all fighting each other as well. And that was inevitably, I'm afraid, going to happen. And I just want to get back to the days when we can all say we're all human. We all bleed the same colour under our skin. And let's stop trying to politicise and break down into these tiny little groups, because actually it doesn't get us anywhere.
Suzanne, the problem is there was never a time when we were all human. I mean, if we look back on it, actually there's far less racism now than there used to be, right?
The report was out today. Britain's one of the least racist countries on earth. I said it on Question Time. Career ended.
Well, I don't think that was the reason your career ended. But, Suzanne, I mean, you know, in the old days, it was terrible, right? In the old days, you could have signs up saying no blacks. There was never a time in Britain when we were well, certainly not in my lifetime, when we were a happy society. And I think, if anything, it's now. And that's what we need. I mean, we need proper integration so that, as you say, we are human first.
So should we have a moratorium on immigration, and we should focus on assimilation? Let's stop the boats for 15 years and get everyone to get on better.
Well,
good idea.
No, because there's something called refugees, and most of the people in the boats are discovered to be refugees, and refugees
Do you see the pictures of the boats? They all seem to be exactly the same age and all from places that aren't at war.
No.
I mean, there are genuine refugees, and the British public are very sympathetic to genuine refugees. What they're not sympathetic are to blokes with iPhones from Albania who drop them off the side 2 minutes out of port.
No. So lots of Albanians have been found actually to be victims of modern slavery.
There's modern slavery going on in Leicester at the moment.
But most... Look, what are we doing about Sudan? In Sudan, there are masses of refugees. So what are we saying? oh, you're not allowed on our planes,
No one said
even
that.
if you are a doctor, because you've only got a visa and you're not a British person.
Nobody has said that. You're using an outlier to make a point. The point is, the boats that are arriving in the UK are predominantly Albanian, single men of working age who are going to come here. They're going to do whatever they do, and then they're going to bring their families with them. And and the British public have no say in it, and they're furious about it. Suzanne,
Absolutely.
go. Talk to me.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there was this very much through the Blair years, there was this policy of multiculturalism, which wasn't quite just the nice let's all get on together idea that it sounds. It was this specific idea that you could come to Britain and you could continue to act as you would in your own country. And anyone that said, well, you needed to assimilate into the host culture was considered to be racist. I'm afraid that has led to a complete breakdown in community relations in some areas. It's led to the most terrible tragedies, including white girls, for instance, in some areas where there are high numbers of Pakistani men who have abused them.
Hold on. If we're talking about young girls...
Let's just let Suzanne finish her
point. White men do it more often.
No, they don't. Don't be intersectional. Can't turn around and give me some facts before you turn around and go, white men rape people more than brown men. It's such a non-argument. Sorry, I was listening to Suzanne. If you're going to interrupt, wait until she finished the point. Thank you.
It's led to a grotesque increase in things like female genital mutilation in this country, which the government, I'm afraid, is taking far too long to crack down on and get a handle on. It has allowed these vile cultural practices. I mean, I will use that word. I don't believe in cultural imperialism. I don't think our culture is better than anybody else, but I certainly do think that some elements of our cultures are better than other cultures. And I think that's self-evidently the case when you're talking about things like FGM. It's not something that anybody should want in a country, and it's not something that anybody should want to promote. But it's gone on in this country. We still have arranged marriages. Forced marriages, actually, I should say. All these practices we have allowed to flourish in Britain, when actually we should have said right from the start, you come to Britain, you abide by our rules, these are our rules, this is our culture, like it, lump it, or leave.
Scarlett, so multiculturalism a success, or should we have a multiracial society or a multicultural society?
I do think we should have a multicultural society, but I do think that laws are laws, and female genital mutilation, which I completely agree with Suzanne, is absolutely appalling. It is forbidden here, and the problem is actually not that it happens here, where it is absolutely against the law. It's that young girls are taken back to the country of their mother's origin, holiday, and actually they're trying to stop it. Forced marriages are against the law here. So it's not that people bring over appalling things. It's that they go back, and the forced marriages, of which there are very few, tend to be youngish girls.
But should they leave their forced marriages and female genital mutilation at the door?
Yes, of course.
Strangely, sadly,
they have to agree. They have to obey British laws.
Sadly, though, they teach FGM in schools. It's obviously dreadful because it is to mutilate anyone's genitals. But they still teach that your gender assigned at birth may be the wrong one, and they'll chop the bits off for fun.
Come on,
they do.
Come on,
I've
Laurence.
got the lesson plans for my own son's school.
That is completely different.
Suzanne, would you like to offer a parting shot of your own, and then Scarlett will finish us off?
I am absolutely appalled by the way in which very young children, teenagers, are having their thoughts that they might be born in the wrong body taken so seriously at such an early age. I think a lot of us might have had that feeling when we were younger, and perhaps worry that had we had the same kind of culture of acceptance of these ideas, and not to mention the whole medical procedures that follow, we could have had very different lives and very much more unhappy lives, I think. So I think this is going to be a massive scandal. I think eventually this bubble will burst. I think we will see streams and streams of young people bitterly regretting that they've taken hormone treatments and had such radical surgery. I think it's an absolute disaster waiting to happen. And frankly, I do not understand how anyone that pushes this theory can possibly think they're doing good. But they obviously do think they're doing good, but they are completely deluded. It is disastrous.
Thank you. Very quickly, a final point from you, Scarlett. We've got to go to the break.
I think that hormone treatment and any sort of surgery that is about changing sex for teenagers is completely and utterly wrong.
A consensus.
A consensus.
Yippee! Ladies and gentlemen.
But I do not think that
I'm a very good actor. You made that clear already. Thank you very much, Scarlett Maguire, former Labour advisor, and Suzanne Evans, political commentator. Still to come, your opinions on whether or not the Conservative Party is actually still Conservative. But don't miss the Fox and News Hounds panel. Reem Ibrahim and Rachel Watkin next, back in Trois.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference. And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
Right, folks, that was a spicy one, wasn't it?
With us four, plus a special guest.
Sometimes she has to stick her foot in it. Sometimes she has to say things as they are.
Sometimes I think we should keep the refugees and send the pensioners to Rwanda. Then we'd be in a much better state.
Well, Benjamin, that is...
The Saturday 5. Saturday nights from 8. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Right. Earlier, I asked you if the Conservatives are still Conservative, and this is what you had to say. Tim says, the governing party have lost their way. The grassroots still have Conservative values and wish they would get back to those values. Trans, woke, net zero, etc. must go. Amen, brother. John says, no, it's been overtaken by the right-wing ERG and UKIP. Brexit and Brexiteer PM Johnson, who filled his government with these people and who got rid of the intelligent central Conservatives from the party. That's why today's Tories are the most corrupt party we've ever had. Have you been living under a rock? Andrew says, Tories are now centre-left, Liberals are left and Labour are far left. Whatever happened to the party wanting security, border control and no taxation? There is no party representing common sense anymore. Yes, there is a Reclaim Party. The UK is crying out for a new party. This is true, actually. Someone was saying the other day that Labour managed to attack... Blair's Labour managed to do well by attacking the Tories from the right, and it seems that the Tories are trying to attack Labour from the left. So it's all mad. Sophie says, yes, the grassroots are. Well, we have faith in the grassroots then. Anyway, you're back with me, Laurence Fox. The biggest story of the week is the sharp exit of Richard Sharp as BBC chairman. He was accused of failing to declare a conflict of interest by being involved in a secret loan for the Prime Minister Boris Johnson. Although the subsequent investigation found he had breached the rule, it didn't necessarily mean he would have to quit. However, Mr Sharp concedes his appointment is now untenable. Here's your £800 loan. It's not in the public interest. Is this more anti-Boris, anti-Tory witch hunting, or was he right to step down? Reem Ibrahim, let me come first to you.
I mean, this is corruption, isn't it? I mean, that's really what it is. And I think the reason why this is so crazy is that, the fact that the Prime Minister appoints the BBC chairman in the first place, I think is absurd. And it breeds all of this corruption, right? I mean, this is an £800,000 loan that Richard Sharp helped arrange for the then Prime Minister Boris Johnson. It is unacceptable. I don't necessarily think he did anything wrong himself, but this is a problem with the connection, the very troubled relationship that the BBC has always had with the government. I say we get rid of the BBC, get rid of the licence fee, and then we won't have these corruption issues.
Do Rachel, you obviously will agree with all of what's just been said here.
I think it's outrageous that he is responsible for £3.8 billion. That was how much was spent with the BBC in 2021 of the everyday person's money. And surely that leads to a much bigger problem of question of freedom of speech, because if they are in total cahoots, then surely we've not got a democracy anymore.
Yeah, carry on speaking, because I've found a bit that I really want to say about that. Reem, what do you think?
Incredibly undemocratic. Totally agree with Rachel on this, but I suspect you disagree on the conclusion about the BBC and its role in government, right?
Defund it, get rid of it, move forward, subscription model, whoop, whoop.
No, I agree. I actually do agree.
Do you?
With you. Yes, because the whole purpose of the BBC is to keep impartiality, but if it's not impartial, then what is it serving?
Hang on a minute, we've got a rational lefty alert. Yeah, no.
Somebody on the left that can think for themselves.
But look at this. Sunak was responsible for bringing Sharp into government, even though he was his economic advisor. He was also Sunak's boss.
He was his
before,
boss.
And then it's 800 grand.
But
and it's just like, I'm just sitting there going, you corrupt bunch of beeps. And then Hancock with his 250 grand a year he made throughout COVID. I'm just like, you lot are the worst.
Yeah, but he got his interview a week after organising the loan.
Which is... That's
totally unrelated.
Hang on a minute.
Totally unrelated.
I've got to do Ofcom stuff here. How dare you? I'd like to correct that. So there's absolutely no evidence of massive corruption by all of these crony people.
No, but he did have his interview the following week.
Facilitated the loan.
For facilitating.
It was Boris Johnson's cousin, his Canadian cousin, to be fair. I know, it's terrible. We need balance. Well, what I will say is that what's interesting about this is just the troubled relationship the BBC have always had with the government. And I think the solution is obviously to get rid of the BBC.
Replace it with Gary Lineker TV and move on.
I would say let's not spend our taxpayer money. Let's not force people to spend their money on the BBC. You know what? If the BBC is so great, why do we force people to pay for it?
This is a good question.
What I want to know is why Boris needed such a large loan anyway.
Exactly.
Because
you need 800 grand now.
Apparently it was for his children's education, his children's schooling, and for his divorce. And apparently...
Which one? and also which children?
And which child?
Boris, we're sorry, we love you.
And apparently he told the BBC in 2009 that his £250,000 salary from the Telegraph was chicken feed.
Right, hang on, guys. I have a feeling there's a noise coming. I hate this noise. Is it coming? That's even worse than last week's. Cat, you pathetic, useless person. Cass is fired. Anyway, that's her tooting the silly horn for the half-time in the news hounds. Right, still to come, the popular prince and then Mark Dolan, which is also a popular prince of this parish. We'll be back in 3.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing. We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Hello, I'm Calvin Robinson. Do not miss my Common Sense Crusade Saturdays at 7 p.m. Join me for some in-depth discussions on faith. Is that not the start of the slippery slope? It's very much so. And the big moral questions of the day. I'm baffled.
You've got some nerve.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hiya. We return to the panel with Reem Ibrahim, political commentator, and Rachel Watkin, eco-entrepreneur. Now, look, I was looking through this today, a story that really shocked me this week, so I just want to talk about it. It's average rents have continued to hit new highs, according to the property website Rightmove, as the shortage of available properties continues. Asking rents outside London have reached £1,190 a month on average. Rightmove said while in London, they have risen to above £2,500. That's 30 grand a year. Coronation count. Right, now listen. So tell me, someone write in actually, because I'm really bad at maths. Okay, this is all Googled, and we all know how Google doesn't tell us the truth. If the average wage outside in London, let's start in London, if the average wage is £36,611 a year, right? That's what they're saying. You've got to get taxed on that, by the way. And the asking rents in London now, coming up now, is £30,000 a year. I'm like, we're about to hit mass non-payment of rents, are we? OK, outside London, £26,856 a year average wage, rent £14,280. Are we about to hit, I mean, this seems like Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac levels of game over financial crash. I mean, are we about to witness mass non-payment of rents?
I think we've hit the perfect storm. We've had...
Thanks for that, cheerful.
We love positivity.
The perfect storm of housing, because we've had buy-to-let owners being forced out of the market due to the tax erosion or tax savings taken away. We've had the rise of Airbnb and properties like that. We've had the holiday-let tax havens. Add that to the fact that social housing has gone down by 8.5% in the last 10 years, as opposed to the population going up by 6%.
Well, that's great, isn't it? You obviously are a major fan of social housing, welfare state. So
Love
just
welfare state.
give us your love letter to the welfare state of social housing.
My love letter to welfare state. Well, look, I don't necessarily think that the decreasing number of social housing available is the problem. The problem is that we just don't build enough houses. I mean, it really is economics 101, right? If you increase the supply of something, the prices go down. Young people, like myself, will probably never be able to afford to own their own home because the government and because of NIMBYs have failed to allow for these houses to be built. I mean, at the moment, across England, the average house costs more than 10 times the average salary. That is absolutely astronomical. It's unfeasible for us to be able to own our own homes. We need to build more. First of all, let's allow building on the green belt. A lot of the green belt is not green. Let us build on it. Let us build more homes, and let us be able to afford our own homes so that we can live in Thatcher's property-owning democracy that we thought we had that vision for.
It's all speculative, though, isn't it? It's a speculative bubble.
But I was sat with this guy in the House of Commons the other day at a dinner over AI, and he's one of the Dragon's Dens.
Okay.
And he does property. I said, so how do you make money? And he goes, oh, we just basically build really nice hotel rooms for people and charge them £1,500 a month for them.
Yeah.
And they have shared kitchens, shared community areas. This is terrible. Well, you know, how are you meant to feel happy and optimistic about the future? What's your solution? What do we do?
Well, the solution is to generate more public sector housing or social housing immediately.
How?
Why social housing? Why public sector housing?
Because poor people need houses too, you nasty Tories.
Because until we bring the rent prices down by the free market, it's just not affordable. So what do they do?
So why is the solution to build more government housing? Surely the solution is to allow the private sector to build more houses and allow people to own their own homes.
Oh yeah, but that's going to take time. That is going to take time. And how are they going to afford the mortgages and everything until the prices come down? They can't.
They'll come down if you build.
The prices aren't going to come down because we don't. It's supply.
And supply and demand, exactly. And that's why I'm saying social housing needs to be built first. To ease.
Totally disagree.
Hang on, we should look after the poorest in our society.
Oh, absolutely. But the solution isn't to then say we're going to spend more taxpayer money, even more taxpayer money than we already are, being spent that on building social housing. Instead, we should be allowing private companies to build those houses that we so desperately need in this country.
The point is that they don't do that because there is so much land that's already owned by the developers, and it's the developers themselves.
And they don't build on it.
That don't build on it.
But they don't build.
Stifling supply because that way they keep the prices
just
up.
Absolutely not true. Because why would they not build housing that they're going to make money from? That's just not true. The reason why they're not building is because of regulations. It's because the government has stopped them. It's because of NIMBYs and local residents that don't want people building in their own areas.
They have blatantly stated that they are stifling supply because they keep the rest of the housing.
Even I know that.
Why would they be purposefully stifling supply that they can't build?
Money goes up, less demand.
But they make more money by building more homes.
No, they don't.
Yes, they do.
The land is, as you will no doubt know, the UK is quite small. So if you don't build on something, the value of it goes up until it crashes, which I've got a nasty feeling, judging by these stats. If you're being asked to pay, can we just stop and absorb that figure just one more time? £36,611 is what your average salary is in London. Your asking rent is 30 grand. No one can pay it. We're going to need social housing like it's going out of fashion, I would imagine. Pretty much, and not just in London and across the UK. So OK, we have to get to an answer here. A solution for the world, because I like to get to a solution for the world. What's the solution?
People will have to move in with their nans.
Great, I don't
That's what they do in every other culture.
I still live at home.
Yeah.
Let's go
I still live at home with my parents, and I stayed at home during university. I go to the LSE in central London.
Do you pay them rent?
And I don't pay them rent.
Why
no.
not?
I buy
I thought you were a Conservative.
So my dad always says, Reem, you go on TV and talk about how much you hate socialism, but at home you're a socialist and take money.
Well, the family is the ultimate social unit.
It is.
Oh, do we have any more? Shout in my ear if we're allowed to talk more. All right, we can.
Yeah.
All right, coronation news. Prince William is more popular than King Charles. That's hard. Sorry. With the younger generation, are you looking forward to the coronation? Reem, are you looking forward to the coronation?
I am, and I really hope that they don't try and sort of dumb it down a little bit. I love the royal family, and I think that we need to be a little bit more patriotic. We saw the recent poll that young people of my generation tend to actually want to get rid of the monarchy. I hope that this coronation changes their minds.
Well, let's see. It's going to be a very diverse, equitable and inclusive one. How are you feeling about the coronation? Should Prince Charles do a call to prayer?
Don't get me wrong, the royal family has a role. I personally like the royal family, and it's great for the rest of the world to see this pomp and circumstance. But it's not personally my cup of tea, even though I am waving my Union Jack.
Will you, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much will you be missing Meghan?
Do you know what? Meghan has created her own storm. What can I say? They don't like how they've been treated by the press, so they talk to the press.
-5. Not
Where
for me.
is this kind, compassionate conservatism that I want to see?
I'm not a conservative, I'm a libertarian. I believe the state has the
They're
propensity...
dangerous. Libertarians are like woke right-wingers. Rachel, thank you again for being the voice of reason, and I'm looking forward to joining the Labour Party very soon. Reem...
Get better soon.
Sort yourself out. It's going to be all right. There's going to be a big coronation show next week, but first of all, I would like to thank you, the audience, my panel, and all of my other guests for joining me tonight. Coming up next is Mark, very tanned Dolan. Mark, what's on tonight?
Laurence, what a brilliant show. We pick up the baton at 8. My Mark Meets guest is the comedy legend Vicky Michelle from Allo Allo. She's in EastEnders now. And, of course, I'm a Celebrity. Could she get away with the naughty comedy of Allo Allo in 2023? I'll be asking her about PC and wokeism on the box and on the radio. In My Big Opinion, I'll be dealing with the BBC. They've lost their chairman, but they lost the plot years ago. My prescription for a new funding model for this organisation. Also, Matt Hancock's back in the news, talking about misinformation. I'll be tackling his misinformation, which we've had loads of in the last 3 years. Plus, your video calls, your emails, and some brilliant studio guests. I'll see you after the weather.
Hello again, welcome to the latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. A warmer weekend for many of us, sunny spells, but also some heavy showers developing each day. Those showers will be hit and miss and affect different parts of the UK on different days. But we've got low pressure moving away for the time being. That's left a legacy of cloudy skies for Friday, and into Friday evening the cloud tends to thicken. If anything, it will lower, it will cover the hills in places. There'll be some mist around western coasts as well, and some outbreaks of rain affecting the Grampians and the Highlands with snow over the hills. It's going to stay cold in the far north of Scotland, but elsewhere a milder night to come. And whether you've got the clear skies or the cloud, it's going to be around 8 to 10 Celsius first thing. Then on Saturday morning, a fairly dreary start to the day, actually. A lot of low clouds, some mistiness around western coasts. But inland, as temperatures rise, the cloud will lift. It will brighten up. There'll be some sunshine coming through. However, as temperatures rise, especially for Northern Ireland, parts of Wales, the West Midlands, there could be some slow-moving showers, some thunderstorms and some hail. So watch out for those during Saturday afternoon. Away from those areas, actually, Scotland and Northern England stay cold and generally grey, but mostly dry. And towards the southeast, we'll see some warm sunshine. But into Saturday night, most places turn cloudy once again. And as the cloud thickens up from the west, bringing with it mist and murk, we'll also see outbreaks of rain. On and off rain, yes, but nevertheless, a fairly wet start to Sunday across western parts of the UK, especially western Scotland, where it's going to be persistent first thing. And as that rain moves northeastwards, it's going to stay damp across the north of Scotland through much of the afternoon. Elsewhere, the rain breaking up into showers, and there'll be some slow-moving downpours once again, especially northern and western England, Wales and Northern Ireland. Monday's showers mainly affect the southeast. It's going to be warm again.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nah, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News. The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Saturday nights on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
Saturday nights on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's an event that has remained virtually unchanged for 1,000 years.
And we invite you to join us here on GB News for this historic event.
All next week, we'll be talking to you in towns and cities across the country.
Building up to the main event on Saturday.
From pageantry at the palace to unearthing the history of this ancient ritual.
Come celebrate with us.
The coronation of King Charles III, Saturday, May the 6th. Join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
It's 8 o'clock. Happy Friday and welcome to Mark Dolan Tonight. This evening, I'll be asking the co-founder of Vote Leave, Douglas Carswell, is Brexit Britain proving the doubters wrong? Is Rishi Sunak right to refuse to apologise for slavery and entertain the idea of reparations? Also, we'll hear from both sides on that debate. What's your view? Would 4 more years of Joe Biden be good or bad for Britain? Is he up to the job? We'll be asking America's top doctor. In my big opinion, the BBC is losing their chairman, but that's the least of their problems. My reaction to the bombshell departure today of the Beeb boss, Richard Sharp. In the big story, are changes to gambling rules an example of the nanny state in overdrive? Do we run the risk of demonising gamblers and treating them like children? My Mark Meets guest is TV comedy icon Vicky Michelle, star of EastEnders and, of course, Yvette Carte Blanche from Allo Allo. So, big guests, big stories and always big opinions. A lively 3 hours to come. First, the headlines with Ray Addison.